Okay,
hello,
we are
hello.
we're live. We're just gonna check our levels.
Coming at you. Hello. Woo.
Um,
Hello, Regina.
no.
Kidding. Just kidding. Hi.
Hi everyone.
Hello. Is anyone out there? Hello. If anyone has any comments about our levels, please let us know in the comments. Welcome. Hello.
Welcome to Thursday Night Live. It's a live streaming series from the Mackenzie Art Gallery. I'm Kat Blimke.
I'm Jonathan Carroll.
We're both digital programs coordinators at the Mackenzie Art Gallery.
True.
And on Thursday nights at 7 p.m., we partner with artists, curators, and educators to deliver workshops, panels, or screenings that reflect on how to view, how to make, and how to enjoy digital art. You, as the audience, play a key role in how this happens. During today's tour, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the panel, or the tour, ask questions about the exhibit through the live stream chat. And this chat, it's a very important function of any live stream, and it can be found on the right-hand side of the video that you're watching. So if you can't seem to be able to see that or access it, make sure that you're logged in to your account on whatever platform you might be using to view the stream, whether that's Facebook, Twitch, or YouTube. And again, those questions can be asked at any time. These questions can be directed at John and myself, or of course our featured curator, Faith Holland. You can also use that chat to talk to other audience members, but just remember that there is another person at the end of that username, so please be respectful. So tonight we're getting a curator's tour of the online exhibit Well Now WTF, an art show co-curated by our guest Faith Holland, as well as Lorna Mills and Wade Wallerstein. On the live stream, we've been discussing virtual galleries for a few weeks now, and while these spaces offer us opportunities beyond certain physical limitations, they are entirely reliant on the resources of the physical land. We'd like to begin by acknowledging the land that we are gathered on for the live stream. That's Jonathan and I, which is Treaty 4 territory, which is the homeland of the Cree, the Saulteaux, Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, and Métis people. You are gathered where you are. And today we're joined by Faith Holland, an artist, curator, and educator based in New York City. Faith, could you tell us a bit more about your practice?
Sure. So I am those three things. I am primarily an artist, really, but I do occasionally curate. And this is actually the first online exhibition I've ever curated. My background is mostly in curating screenings. I used to co-run a screening series in Providence, Rhode Island, here in the States, called Magic Lantern Cinema with my partner, Seth Water. And I've also curated with Nora Merku some white box exhibitions, but this is my first online exhibition, even though I've participated in many as an artist. This is the first one I have curated. Just briefly in my own practice, obviously I make GIFs. GIFs are a major part of this exhibition. I make videos, also a major part of this exhibition, as well as many multiple media. So performance, sculpture, photography, you name it, I like to make it. But it all revolves around intimacy with technology. That's really the sort of thematic I've been working on for the last 10-ish years. I'm getting old. What I want to talk about tonight is, well, now what the fuck? Excuse my language. I think there's a warning somewhere on here.
I think we're good. Yeah.
I know you said WTF, but inside our curatorial circle, we call it Well Now What the Fuck, because that's the question that we have been asking ourselves almost daily since quarantine began. And I just want to give a little. I want to start showing you the exhibition actually, so awesome. You don't have to look at my face. And forgive this background. I'm on a borrowed computer right now, so this computer is doing the best that it can. That's much better. So this exhibition is co-curated by myself, Lorna Mills, and Wade Wallerstein, as you said. But just to reiterate, and it is the exhibition design and installation is by Kalani Nicole. And this exhibition began basically right after, or kind of almost right before quarantine, right at the same time. It was sort of initiated because my classes were canceled suddenly. You know, I thought that I was going into class, and then I wasn't. And I thought I was going to fly to LA to do a solo exhibition, and I wasn't. And so this is kind of what came out of that kind of dearth of activity. Now we're kind of almost inundated with quote online viewing rooms. This is not an online viewing room. It's a website, it's an exhibition, it's not an online viewing room. We should strike that word or that phrase from everyone's vocabulary immediately. Hopefully that day will come soon. But
could you explain what an online viewing room is really quickly? If someone... Oh no, Zoom crashed. Uh-oh.
One
moment, program.
Folks. Well, as we've been discussing in the past few episodes, I won't be getting... Yeah, we won't have Faith's explanation for a moment, but we've been exploring some different ways that galleries have been...
Reconnecting.
Okay. Zoom crashed.
Zoom straight up crashed.
Oh, okay, yeah. Did you... Where... I explained online viewing rooms. Did you catch that?
We missed it all. I was making up time.
Crashed right after I asked the question.
Okay. So the quote-unquote online viewing room is really just a website, but it is a fancy phrase that's been adopted by primarily blue chip and mid-tier galleries, so like the very tippity top of the gallery system, and then the kind of second tier below that, in order to sound like you're not just looking at JPEGs. But that's really what it is. JPEGs on the internet. It's not even GIFs most of the time. So we really wouldn't qualify as a viewing room. But so there was this sort of sudden dearth, right, that's now been filled up. You know, lots of people had kind of the same idea that we had, which was like, oh, we got to do something online. But I think what makes Well Now What the Fuck at least somewhat unique, and not completely unique, is that it was designed to be an exhibition online. We wanted to use media that was natively online. We didn't want to take photographs of walls and put them on the web. We really wanted to do something that made sense natively on the web. So these are web formats. This is the way the work is meant to be seen, which was important to us.
Like, to contextualize just a little bit with the past live streams that we've been doing, we've looked a bit at like 3 virtual gallery spaces that are manifested as like these 3D rooms that are like reiterating the white cube was one sort of conversation that we had, and that we last week we looked at how we could build our own virtual 3D spaces in Unity, because it's sort of a fun to get into the hands of artists is a fun idea, because then you can sort of play with what the idea is. But we're also sort of like, thinking about it, trying to think about it critically in a way where it's like, how could we present art that is more, faithful or to the medium, or more medium specific, which I think is what you're doing here in this show.
Yeah, and as an artist, and I think I'm going to speak for Lorna since she's not here. Maybe she's in the chat, but both of us are like, as artists, make this incredibly flat work. I always joke that like if I was kind of any more flat oriented, any more 2D oriented, I would just like walk into walls all the time. Because I just feel like I don't process digital 3D space particularly well. Like, I'm bad at video games that are like really 3-dimensional. It's just like not definitely not part of my practice, and it's like almost not part of my brain.
Yeah. It's not a given that people will know how to like interact with that, because I don't know, it's just predicated on so much prior knowledge, like you're
I always love it
and
when
also technology. So this is something that's really accessible, and that's always something that's kind of important to me. Like, I don't necessarily want people to have specialized equipment. And it does require some patience and some bandwidth to load this site, but otherwise it is, it's very accessible. But anyway, I want to show a lot of work. So I'm
very excited.
Worried about this time that's taking faster than I anticipated. So I'm going to go through these rooms kind of quickly. There's a lot of work in this exhibition. And I would encourage anyone who is viewing this on the live stream to navigate here directly and really spend the requisite time to look through these works. There's over 100 artists in this exhibition. And so I'm just going to pick and choose a couple of different works out of there. And I want to start, this is the clean room. So the work is organized into different quote unquote rooms. And that's an idea that is obviously borrowed from physical space, but is one that has been part of the web since Web 1.0, thinking about different rooms as part of different parts of a website. And we weren't necessarily intentionally making an homage to that, but it just sort of naturally developed. And so when we were curating this work, it was really kind of putting together works based on kinship, like works that felt like they went together. These rooms are not strictly thematic. It's more about kind of feeling and balance. So this is a piece by the artist Brian Kuo, who is local to us here in New York. And this piece, you can't see the title, but it's called Love Your Box. And so it's really got this very strange perspective because actually we're looking at the ceiling, right? And it takes some time to kind of orient yourself to understand that. But what we as a viewer are put in the position of something rocking in this box, which is left totally ambiguous, right? But it's that rocking gesture is so suggestive, which I really enjoy. I mean, I don't know if Vito Acconci is supposed to be in this box. I sort of naturally imagine actually not Acconci, but like a device, like an overeager device that's kind of like, this is their perspective of the world. Yeah. So, okay. I'm going to move on. So every time you go from one tab to the next, or one room to the next, it opens up a new tab in here. Oh wait, is there more? No. I want to move on to the next room. Okay. So we're gonna move on here to Bed of Nails. And this is a piece by the artist Françoise Gama. And they are working with these kind of vintage and variously limited softwares to make these kinds of animations. So you see these particular kinds of textures and particular kind of line work, which is a product of the kind of limitations of the software. But I've just been obsessed with these animations. Gamma just started recently kind of reviving their social media presences. So now you're getting these animations on like a daily basis, and it was really difficult to choose. At some point, this GIF was labeled Faith's Art Boner because how I described it in our curatorial meeting was, oh my God, this is just like. But so you see these kinds of textures kind of recurring in a lot of Gamma's work. And I mean, there's so many things to love about this piece, but I think what I love the most is just kind of like the tension between the body and abstraction, right? So you can tell that it's figurative, but there's really no one looks like that. I can't twist my body in any kind of way in order to kind of recreate what's going on here. But you see these hands and feet kind of emerging in the face, kind of emerging and then going back just as quickly as they come out. And this is a piece, by the way, from the second wave of the exhibition. So we opened it up on, I think it was April 4th. with about 90 artists. And then we had a second opening where we kind of refreshed the show and brought in some new works. So this is one of the newer pieces to the show, excuse me. And while I'm here in Bed of Nails, I want to just show Lorna Mills's work. Lorna is one of the co-curators of this exhibition, and she and I both, as artists, also contributed work. And this is 100% classic Lorna.
Yeah.
And also like amazingly dark for fruit.
Yeah. And yes, yeah, it has that perfect Lorna darkness and like comedy to it.
Yeah. It's grotesque and it's dark and it's funny and it's all the things in one. And this room kind of informally was called the Death Room. And so this is really where kind of the darkest work, we've kind of put it all in here. So there's a little bit, this is kind of one of the few rooms that's actually a bit thematic.
Yes, you've really managed to keep, with the pieces that you've selected, you've really managed to keep things pretty lighthearted in general. I've noticed through my scrolling.
Yeah, and that was really part of our intention was to kind of like was to be something fun, you know. I mean, there was such heaviness all around us, and some of the work does respond directly to kind of like the conditions of quarantine living and what's going on, but some of it doesn't, you know. And it's really one thing that's been really interesting with this exhibition is the way that we curated was we sent out a prompt to artists to respond to, and it was basically kind of like, well now, what the fuck, you know, like what do we do now, what is life now, what is art now. And so many artists responded with work that is unlike their normal practice, because it's really such a kind of it's an exceptional time, right? It's a once in 100 years occurrence, and so I think that these like strange conditions really led people to go in very different directions from their regular practice. And I think this is actually this piece in Stay Home and Masturbate is a kind of good example of this. This is by the artist Shauna Moulton, also part of the second wave. And Shauna is mostly a video artist, and she makes actually very narrative work primarily. She does this series, which I recently wrote about with my partner, Seth Water, called Whispering Pines, in which she plays a character named Cynthia, who is constantly ailing of these unknown maladies and searching for these kind of new age solutions, which never work. And it's episodic. So she searches for the solution, it maybe works temporarily, and then the next episode, she's sick all over again and has to find something cool. And what I love about this piece of Shauna's is that it does have I don't know, like the same vibe of the Whispering Pines work. Like maybe I could imagine Cynthia doing this kind of dance move that these hands are doing, but obviously it's totally abstracted from that whole narrative.
Yeah,
so
you can imagine this being like an aura clearing.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not sure what these hands are in fact doing, but
well, one thing I love about the GIF format here is how many different processes and practices it's accommodating. Like here, it's like video and performance art sort of that it's being used to convey.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. And one thing that I really enjoy about putting this work together, and especially working with two other curators, is that there's a huge variety of work. And it's been a discovery for me as well. You know, a lot of artists that I didn't know are in this exhibition, and I've learned about their practices because they were brought in by Wade or by Lorna. And we really, all of us sought to kind of bring in a really wide gamut of artists. So 3 curators with kind of 3 different geographies, 3 different backgrounds, all trying to cast a wide net. There's like a huge variety of work in the exhibition, which is really fun. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next room, and this is Clusterfleck Closet. And this is a piece by Ellen Dutgiff, which has this kind of blingy aesthetic, kind of early internet blingy aesthetic. Blingy is a website, for those of you who don't know, in which you can use mostly glittery and kind of twee elements to make your own GIF based on your photograph or from scratch with their library of elements. And I think what's so beautiful about this piece, actually, we had this kind of mini thematic waterfalls. There are a number of different pieces with waterfalls that appear in the exhibition, which was of interest to me, particularly because I made a piece that was all waterfalls, and I went back to the waterfall theme myself after seeing this work come in. I wanted to work with waterfalls. But even though there...
Hello, I believe Zoom just crashed for the second time.
Sorry.
We are just getting this back.
Language going on in this work, it really resonates so differently in this particular moment. You know, there is still this kind of cringe aspect of like things like mindfulness, but also there's something kind of comforting about it as an image, particularly at this time. Ooh, I'm realizing that I'm maybe going too slowly. So I'm going to go on to the next room, Pants Optional. And this is a work by Lajune McMillian. And this is from their Black Movement project. And Lajune works a lot with motion capture. And they are building a kind of library of Black movement through this motion capture, and kind of giving this digital form to Black bodies, which are maybe, you know, most of these models and these movements are based on white bodies and white gestures. And I, you know, again, kind of with Francoise Gama's piece, there is this clarity of the body. I mean, it's clear that that's the reference point, but then also this element of abstraction. And I just find this piece to be so hypnotic and just kind of remarkably beautiful, but also really dark, not only in color, but also in kind of tone, maybe with the slowness or the dissolution of the body. I think it's really quite a remarkable work.
Yeah. I like the connection you're drawing to between the Gamma piece and this. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then just since I'm yammering at you, this is what I put into the work, into the show. And you know, making it work for the show, I actually found it like incredibly difficult. I made maybe 4 or 5 GIFs before I made this. And it was kind of interesting to experience trying to make something right now, and asking all of these artists to, like, you know, make a work or send us a work. And it was really astonishing to me knowing how hard it was for me to like sit down and make something that I liked, the kind of quality of work that I was getting, a lot of which is made specifically for the show. And so I kind of was able to really have an appreciation for what people were sending us, and them, you know, offering to make work for this exhibition, kind of knowing that this took me like many days. I missed our own deadline. Many people, a vast majority, amazingly, made it by the deadline, which enabled us to get this show up really quickly. But I did not make the deadline. I was definitely late, and I abused my power.
As the curator,
you had a lot on your plate, though, so I think it's.
I did. I spent many hours on this show. Okay, so This is Erica Magri, and I always mispronounce her name, so I hope that's right. That's not my natural inclination to say it that way, so I think it's right. And we are in, oh wait, where are we? So sad because the art fairs were canceled. And this piece is also kind of a big jump from her work as I know it, which really kind of her early work is incredibly narrative and elaborate, working with green screen and she makes her own costumes. There are these kind of elaborate sci-fi narratives. And then we get this GIF, which is clearly a character. That's her in the GIF, but clearly she's playing a character. And it is this kind of quintessential like GIF you would send in
Right.
a message, you know?
Tenor
It is,
gifts, yeah.
yeah, it's a tenor GIF, obviously, because it is clearly like expressing this one kind of thing, but this thing that is being expressed is like so far from like, you know, I don't know, Jay-Z rolling his eyes. So I really like how it plays with the forum in that way, but offers us something that's outside of this kind of usual like tenor GIF vocabulary, and instead gives us this kind of like wonky pleasure with like fake hard breasts, and you know the gesture I think is kind of wonderfully acted also.
Especially in the context of, I don't know, art fairs being can't just
Yes.
like, if we miss doing this at the art fair.
Yeah, is this the reaction that, or is this something we normally do at the art fairs? Maybe.
This is what, you know, what you're doing instead of going to the art fair. What we're all doing. Except now all the art fairs are online. They followed us.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, right, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to click into the next room. Wash your fucking hands. And this is a piece by Clusterfleck Collective. And they are an artist collective of many multiple artists. I don't have all of their names. And they're spread across mostly Europe, although I think they do have some US members. But this is clearly coming from the kind of Italian contingent in the Clusterfleck Collective. And again, this is, you know, time is moving so fast and also so slow, but they were making this, and this exhibition opened when, you know, the situation was not that bad yet in the US, or I assume also in Canada. But in Italy, it was at their peak. And so here we get this kind of canny kind of way of processing what's going on. And I love the kind of, I mean, obviously there's the mourning ritual that is being referenced in this piece, right? Denial, anger, depression, bargaining, acceptance. And I think it's so kind of astute. I think actually this gift, even though it's again got these kind of blingy aesthetics, it's saying that we're kind of going through this as a kind of everyday process, right? I mean, whether it's the loop of the gift that we have to kind of go over and over this again and again, or if it's the fact of kind of like morning coffee, right? This thing that we wake up to. And somehow, even though it's all glittery and shining, I really just, this gift hits emotionally very hard, you know, the kind of daily mourning process that we're going through in this time. And it's made sort of cheeky here, but I think also there's something more that really hits and is kind of hidden maybe behind the glitter, but also the glitter is helping us kind of deal with what we're all facing on a kind of daily basis. And so clearly this is a one of the works that's made specifically for this exhibition, and also kind of responding directly to what's going on right now, which thankfully not all the work does, because that would be perfectly exhausting. But it's nice to have a reflection of this particular moment also, which is so incredibly particular, or so I hope. Okay. And now we're in these indoor times, and transported just magnificently by Lily Hanley into this digital outdoor scape, which looks like your backyard. And the reason why I love this work is actually because I have no idea what it's doing, and I've spent so much time looking at it. I haven't asked Lily, and I kind of almost don't want to know. But what precisely is happening as these kind of circles swirl up, zoom up to us, what's happening in the image is really unclear. And I think that's so beautiful because it's something that's so immediately recognizable and then so incredibly changed and made strange. And it's just really stunning. And I still kind of wish I could be in that space, even as it starts to be spring more now, and I get to go outside a little bit more than I was in April. There's a deep longing in this image, and it almost feels like nature is longing for us back as it kind of reaches out and comes towards us. It's so lovely.
Yeah, there's so much to look at in it to try to like follow where the circles are coming from.
And like that it's a GIF format as well, sort of doesn't allow you to understand exactly where the camera is located or if there is even like a single perspective for this, which is nice.
Yeah, I mean, I almost thought about putting it in Photoshop so I could look at it frame by frame. Like you really want to pause it so you can apprehend it, but it's kind of the like unrelenting format of the GIF that you can't do that. You can't get, and it makes it impossible to get a handle on what is going on in this image. And I've spent a lot of time looking at this particular image, and I can't fully grasp it. But I don't want to ruin its magic by watching it frame by frame. So I've allowed myself not to do that. Okay. Burn it down. So this room is entirely new. This was part of the second wave, and all of the works in this room were artists that were part of that second wave of invited artists. And this piece in particular, I'm sorry to be so on the nose. I wanted to make this maybe like the thumbnail for the homepage, but Lauren, it was like, no, it's too much. Can't do it. But this is a work that I just truly love by the Japanese, from Japan, living in New York duo Exonymo. And their practice is really about this kind of tension between the online and the physicality of it. So they are making all of these works that kind of explore these physical artifacts of technology or of the internet in real space. One thing that they are, I think, probably best known for is the internet yamaichi. Yeah, it sparks joy, right, when you hear it. So the internet yamaichi, for those of you who maybe haven't had the chance to experience it, is really basically the same idea of what's going on in this GIF, which is that it takes quote unquote internetish things, translates them into physical goods, and then it is a marketplace for artists to sell these goods to people, which is as much like selling as it is performing, right? So whenever someone is selling a meme or whatever it is, it's also kind of a performance of turning this thing into a commodity, that act of translation. And so this is kind of no exception, reimagining these technologies as kindling fire, and really kind of using and abusing the technologies at hand. Yeah, they do a lot of quite violent things ultimately with technology, a lot of breaking it down, burning it, breaking it down, exposing parts, really kind of getting at the inner life of these elements.
There's something to the like catharsis of it that also I think is what makes this sort of feel specific to this moment?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of us have kind of imagined doing this, but at the same time, and it is violent and it's destructive, but it's also soothing, right? It's like the Yule log that you put on your television,
Yeah.
right? Especially because it is like, I think, pretty much a perfect loop. So it does have that kind of ambient, like warming by the fire, kind of holiday feeling. There's something kind of relaxing about it that you could really kind of sit and watch this and have it in your living space and enjoy it. Like it's in your back. And it's a good gift that you don't have to smell what's going on because
you're protected from the fumes.
Really horrible.
Safety.
So then we get into the video portion of the exhibition, and I'm realizing that we don't really have enough time to watch anything, but I will still talk a little bit about a couple of the pieces that I picked out. And this was curated really to be kind of watched like a screening. So when I'm just going to go through the process of this, when you go ahead and click on, and then the beginning of this piece is screening. So forgive me if I don't get to it quickly enough to pause it. There we go.
You've been warned, audience.
I'll mute it, and you can see the screaming. So it was curated to be a kind of sit down screening, and you can sit down and watch it. It's not that long. It's 38 works, but it really all amounts to, I think, about an hour to an hour and a half. But we found that, like, kind of in the experience of people going to the exhibition, that they were not taking me up on this playlist gesture. So we ended up breaking it down so that you can kind of more easily navigate video to video, and they're presented more like the GIFs are. But we wanted to open up kind of this playlist and this screening with this piece by Guido Segni. And it's an older work. This is from 2016, so it's not made specifically for this exhibition. And yet when you watch it, it kind of feels like it could be. So the piece is called OMG, Today I Prayed for the Internet. And it's really just a supercut. I'm going to unmute it really briefly.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Oh my God!
It's a supercut of people saying, oh my God, which feels so specifically, of this, well, not of this moment, but of this kind of experience of being online, right? It's really this kind of quintessentially online phrase that is totally permeated, offline life as well. But I love that it kind of brings this phrase, which is totally, secular, if not sacrilegious, and turns it into this sort of supercut prayer and kind of hope for the internet, right? So there's, the range of emotions that go on in this video and all the different kind of cadences that this phrase, this super ubiquitous phrase, can take. It's just really astonishing. And I think even though the idea may sound simple, making a supercut of OMG, I think that the editing of this piece is just really stunning. Like, it's just really beautifully edited. Like, the pacing is really wonderful. And so I'm not going to play it now, but everybody, navigate over to the website and sit down and watch, because it's well worth your time.
Highly enjoyable.
It's really great. And this is another piece. And actually, Ra Ella is an artist that I was kind of aware of, but like not super, didn't know her work very well. Okay, there we go. Let me mute and play. And this is one part of a larger body of work. I think it's a trilogy of works about this what's like a kind of online, not an online, a TV talent competition, kind of like God, you can tell that I don't watch this stuff, but like who's talented, I don't
the Idol one.
Yeah,
American
like
Idol.
American Idol. Thank you. And it's just really beautifully rendered. And what kind of emerges, I mean, aside from like the astonishing costuming and she's playing all the characters, and I mean, the techniques of this piece are really stunning. But there's also this kind of racialized narrative. You can hear it a little bit in the language of the piece, which I'm muting. But there's kind of this coded language that is kind of addressing race, and this character in particular is this white passing character, and we find in what's going on here that she actually, in fact, cannot pass. She's not going to make it to the next level of the competition. So they're kind of talking about the quote unquote race card. She's got a deck of cards here. And they're just not, these judges are not buying it. And it's really just, it's also just a hilarious and spectacularly beautiful piece. I mean, the costumes alone, I just kind of want to infinitely stare at. But my favorite kind of like part of it on an aesthetic level are these like amazing aliens that go by very, very quickly.
The audience members.
The audience is just really, they deserve their own space in the talent competition. Just all these really beautifully rendered like space arms and the eyes that are so emotive. It's really incredibly thoughtful and beautiful. So this is another one, particularly to seek out and watch. And then I'm going to just do one more room, which is Zoom link, please. Appropriate for us since we are in fact on Zoom. And this is a piece by the artist Chris Collins. And like Chris's other work, it sort of takes technology as it anthropomorphizes technology that is already trying to be kind of the stand-in for human parts, right? So you've got these, I actually don't know what they're called, but they're the kind of pointers. They're like the little remotes for VR, right? So if you're using VR goggles and you're in an interactive space, you're going to use one of these little devices to kind of click on things or point to things or touch things. But here we have them kind of situated instead as hands, which is what they are standing in for. But doing these like ultimately really mundane things like this, this piece is called R&R, and we see them kind of like tending a Zen garden, lighting candles, listening to This American Life, but it's all garbled. And aside from the fact that it's already sort of surprising that we're using these devices in this way, what I really love most about this piece is that in 4 minutes, there are so many twists, actually. So things keep going awry until ultimately, and for the sake of time, I'm gonna fast forward. So spoiler alert, look away. But if you haven't seen the piece yet, this is a spoiler. But ultimately what happens after a series of mishaps with technology, with this drone or with packages, is that reality itself just sort of breaks apart in this really beautiful way. So we finally get outside, but then outside is not real either, and in fact shatters into all these different cubes. Which I think I maybe gasped when I first saw this work, because it really was so surprising and also, I think, quite beautiful. Oh, and the playlist is in effect and it's going to the next piece. But I think I am actually going to leave it there in case maybe there are questions, because I know we're on a tight, we're keeping a tight ship tonight.
Attempting to. Yeah, if folks who are listening would like to just write in comments if they have any questions for Faith about this show and about the work we've been seeing, please write them in the comments. But then in the meantime, there's some questions that we were going to ask.
Yeah,
too.
we're dying to know. I was I was really interested because this exhibit, it's been described as neo-net art, and the for those folks at home who aren't familiar with net art, with like early work on the internet that often had to utilize GIF work. Because it was the only option for moving images. I was really thinking about what it meant to sort of take some of these aesthetics and transpose them next to sort of the slick graphics, like the sort of gritty GIF against the slick graphics of Web 2.0. If you had you really see a lot, like you said, you have a lot of the blingy sites aesthetic coming through. I was both myself and I know I had an earlier audience submission for someone who couldn't make it to the stream, sort of wondering about your vision for the place for neo-net art and maybe the revitalization of some of these aesthetics, and maybe even some of the sort of ideals that are carried over from earlier net art. If you had as you were curating, or as you're making work and curating work, how that comes into play.
Yeah, I mean, the GIF is such a wonderful format because of its limitations. And, for those of you who aren't, kind of GIF tech heads, you just come to it from like your GIF keyboard. The GIF is a very old file format. I think it was invented in 87 and then became moving. So it actually can be used for still images, but we now associated almost exclusively with moving images, which happened in 89. That was a big innovation. Yeah. It still has still has basically the same limitations as far as I know as that 89 version, which is it has 256 colors. If you're making it in Photoshop, you can only have 500 frames. If you can exceed 500 frames in the file format, but Photoshop will limit you to 500 frames. And its compression, because it's from 89, is ultimately not that great. So you end up with things that are meant to be really small, but actually the way that we use it now, it tends to be bloated, like not as well compressed as video. So it's a very particular way of working, because you're sacrificing quality. That you're going to get these different kind of GIF specific textures. I mean, you can see it even on the front page, some of these patterns that are particular to the GIF algorithm. But what I particularly love about it is it's a way that you can work with the moving image that really releases you from the narrative. And of course it is possible to make a narrative or pseudo-narrative GIF. But I really think of it as a kind of space for like a tableau or just something really, really quick. And that's why I have particularly been drawn to it as an artist. But also, since I do work this way, I'm a big appreciator of it as a viewer. And it's also, in this moment when so much is going on, I think it's really nice to have something that is just bite-sized. And we tried to do that, even though the video works are obviously necessarily longer than the GIFs. None of them exceed 5 minutes, and that was our own kind of specific limitation. We wanted works that are short and not to cater to kind of a post-MTV generation or some bullshit like that. But I just think now's not the time to sit down to like a Hollis Frampton film and be kind of like immersed in this like meditative and difficult work. It was really more about kind of having fun and kind of keeping it keeping it moving, and offering a variety, and also giving equal space to people, right? Because if you make one work really long, then maybe you kind of get stuck there. But I don't think you really get stuck in this exhibition. You really can kind of go from one work to the next, allowing that work to be highlighted. That was something that was really important to us, especially with so many works in the exhibition, to really give that work space. And I think this is kind of like this was such a great design of Kalani's, was to kind of manage the chaos that we brought together, but also kind of give each work its own individual space, and actually and kind of like have it really clean here.
We do have Lorna Mills in the chat, and she says short video art is good video art.
Yeah, that's an extremely Lorna thing to say.
And I don't know if this came up earlier, if we already addressed this, but there have been the work of Well Now What the Fuck has not. It on the website, it is, we have GIFs and we have the video works, but there's also been events that have been going on,
right.
And those have been streamed through Twitch. As well, that is where that's where both of the openings happen. I'm very curious, and maybe you can tell a bit about it to our audience, how you like translated that the sort of social function of the art gallery opening online, how you found that was responded, and maybe a little bit about some of the events that have been going on.
Yeah, I mean, that was something that was really important to me, was to have it be a kind of social space. So to have something that was properly an opening, like to have an event where people could gather, look at the works together, and have a social space. But also to have these chats that are embedded in the website on every single page, so people could talk to each other. Oh, I'm not logged in.
Borrowed computer.
Yeah, wrong computer. So people could talk to each other kind of whenever they happen to be in the gallery, in the way that you would have a kind of social space if you were in a physical gallery. And I think that's actually kind of underutilized in online exhibits. But it's something that I use a lot across all my websites. I have chat embedded in kind of anything that is specifically a web-based work. Well, maybe not, almost. I don't want to say absolutely, but like on my homepage, there's a chat, which doesn't ever get the critical mass that Well Now What the Fuck does, but chat is something that is kind of both vintage, really kind of an artifact of the old web, but also is something that, is part of this live streaming. It's such a part of the messenger culture that we're in. But embedding it on the website is definitely, I think, kind of more of a throwback. But I don't know why. Almost, I think that it's underutilized, specifically in the exhibition format. But it ties directly to the live stream, so it's probably the most, or it's assuredly the most active when we're on the Twitch. Right. So if you are on the website, you can go directly here to the Twitch, which I'm not going to open up because nothing's happening there right now. And there we have been doing a variety of things, from artist talks to poetry reading, live visuals. We've really had kind of an amazing array of events for the exhibition, which is totally exhausting. I'm perfectly exhausted by it. Kudos to YouTube for doing this for 6 weeks. God, I'm tired. But it was important to us to kind of keep that social space open through these events, and to kind of keep the exhibition active but through the event. So giving people a reason to come back, creating a social space where people return to again and again. And one thing I've found that's really nice about these events is that the other artists are attending them, right? So obviously they're attending the openings, but also, if there's a poetry reading, in the chat, and I'm seeing other artists who are in the exhibition who aren't necessarily, part of that particular event. So, kind of creating a community where there already is one. We already a lot of us knew each other, but creating a space for that outside of just social media was another kind of secondary goal for the exhibition.
So we have our first audience question from John Hampton. John asks, can you talk about what kind of economic models you debated and how the one you've used is working out? Because as we can see here, pay what you wish admission, all funds are distributed directly to participating artists.
Yeah, I mean, so this came together really, really quickly, and it was just, the three of us who are working independently of any institutions, and we just wanted to put something together, kind of like to kind of bring people together as part of the exhibition and create this community space and give us, frankly, something to do, because I found that every time I wasn't doing something, I was horribly depressed. Still really that same way. But then, as kind of quarantine continued and, it was clear as we were kind of curating and hearing from artists what was going on in their own lives and our lives too, with our work being precarious or losing jobs, or which happened to all of us, like in various degrees, happened to nearly all of us who were organizing the exhibition. We really wanted to at least try to pay our artists whatever we could. So we wanted to create this suggested donation bit, and we really debated quite a bit how to do this. So at some point I was like, oh, maybe people should have to go through that space where you would donate, even if they don't have to donate. And we were all pretty unanimous in saying, we don't want people to have to pay for it, because it's so against the kind of spirit of net art to be charged for an exhibition. But we thought about kind of making people walk, almost like when you go to a museum that's based on a donation model, you still have to go get a ticket, So we thought about making people still have to go get a ticket, have to say no, I'm not going to pay. But ultimately we didn't do that because aesthetically we found it was just going to be too much of a drag. We didn't want people to go to PayPal and not go to the exhibition. And then ultimately we did manage to get sponsorship. So Giphy, before they were part of Facebook, signed on as a sponsor of the exhibition. And we're still working with them to distribute the funds to the artists. But it's been big success. I mean, especially for a show of this size, I'm not thrilled with the amount of money that we've raised. Although, one thing that we are talking about doing internally is the curatorial team is not taking any money, and certain artists have opted out of the money so that artists who do need it will get a bigger share. So I think ultimately we will be able to give something of a substantial amount of money to artists who do need it. But I would love to just pay everyone a Carfax fee, if I could. But I don't think we're going to get there, unfortunately.
So we have another.
This will be our last question of the evening, as I can see Faith's clock. 2 hours ahead of our own. But we have an audience question. Do you feel or see if there is an aesthetic distinction between artists from different age groups within the exhibit? Because you did have both. You've there is a fair or a broad selection of artists in this exhibit.
That's a really interesting question, and one I haven't really thought about. But I think the short answer is no. Mm-hmm. I think the short answer is no. We do have a huge gamut of ages. I think probably the youngest is around 18. And I know we have artists at least in their 60s. So there's a pretty big gamut of ages. But I don't think you would be able, if you didn't know who any of these people were, I don't think you would be able to say, oh, this is the teenager, this is, you know, the 40 something, this is the 50 something, this is the 60 something. I don't think you could. I don't think that there are clear aesthetic demarcations. And I don't have a good explanation for that. Except maybe some of it is determined by the technologies and kind of the aesthetics that are built into the softwares. And these artists are, you know, even though there's a huge variety of styles, there are certainly different modalities of working, right? Whether it's something that is made using Blingy, or whether it's something that's made using a 3D modeling software. Certainly there are kind of style likenesses along those lines, but they're not along edge lines, I don't think.
Yeah, everyone's sort of growing up with the same, even if some people might have started working on the internet in the 90s, it's like everyone's sort of growing up with the internet at the same time as the aesthetics change and stuff.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's all new, right? So, well, I mean, that's not entirely, but I mean, but by new, I mean, you know, less than 100 years old. Very new for an art form. I don't mean, you know, I don't mean 5 years. And I think sometimes as an educator, I think sometimes my students forget that, you know, these things are older than they think, but it is still really new. You know, I mean, I come from a photography background, which is also like a young medium, but this is a lot younger, and it changes so rapidly. And I think all of us, young or old, are kind of like constantly working to adapt. I particularly like to work in things that are not that new. It's tiring.
Yes, yeah, always. Yeah, the chase for it turns into a chase for novelty sometimes when
yeah, and also a chase of, like, you know, updating and keeping your work functional. There's just nothing. Yeah, I mean, even with web-based work, which I do make web-based work, and you know, I have some pieces now that are getting up there. You know, they're like 7 years old, or, you know, and things are deprecated. You know, they kind of should be updating them actually right now in quarantine while I have the time, but because some things have, like, you know, are not as functional as they were 7 years ago. It really moves very quickly. So I think we're all kind of trying to learn and keep up, and also experimenting, right? When something's new, it's and certainly some of these softwares are presenting new possibilities. The way of using them, there's nothing established, right? So everyone's experimenting at the same time.
Yeah, it sort of feels like having to be in the past and the future at the same time, where you have to be thinking about your past work and whether or not it's still functional, and then also in thinking about the new work that you're making and how it's going to work in the future. Yes.
Yeah, if you wanted to work in the future, and some of this work I think is ultimately ephemeral in the way that, you know, I don't know, a food work would be ephemeral, or a performance ephemeral. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? This work is responding to this moment.
It's so true. That's such a great note to end on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Faith.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We'll post the link to both the website as well as your own personal media at the bottom for the audience who wants to continue to explore while you go to bed. Is there anything that perhaps you want to plug, like any upcoming events with the exhibit? Or
oh gosh, I actually don't know what's coming up on our schedule.
It's on Facebook.
It's on Facebook. I'm actually now working on my own solo exhibition for Transfer, which is going to be online and off. So that's my attention is kind of shifted there.
Oh, amazing! So we'll update the audience when that goes out.
Is that a ways off or soon?
June 4th.
Oh, okay, amazing! So
cool.
Soon.
Awesome.
So I'm distracted.
Yes, thank you so much for taking the time today. This has been a really exciting exhibit to see coming out at this time, and yeah, I've been really looking forward to talking to you about it and getting to know a bit more of the works which of course, yeah, I don't have the context always, but it was amazing for it to hear you bring them through.
And perfect for the context of the conversation we've been having to give us a sort of like in the field example of art on the internet right now.
Yeah.
So thanks so much for providing
This
that
is
for us.
literally art on the internet right now.
Yeah, totally. You're getting it, folks. So we're gonna stop the our live stream, but I will post a link to our Zoom call in the chat. So if anyone who's watching this and wants to keep hanging out, we can
with us too as
Yeah.
Faith, just us.
Yeah. So maybe we
I
can
can hang around for a little bit.
Yeah, cool. Well, so we can hang out on the website for a bit longer if people want to continue to check things out together, sort of make an impromptu social space here. So I'll be posting those links in the chat. So if you want to keep on chatting,
Go to the out video.
yes, we will be stopping our live stream right
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for
now.
watching. Thanks for coming.
Bye.
Bye.